Good Wednesday to you, everybody in com/gov 664. Welcome to week. A boom for halfway through the shortened semester. Hoo-ah. Let's get that kicked off correctly with the last cup of espresso that I'll have today because it's early afternoon and I need my sleep. All right, everybody. Good week. Good welcome to you. Let's take a look at what we're going to do in week 4, and then we'll take a look at week 3. Just to answer a couple of email questions that have come up. One of you asked me, last week I was reading through some of your responses, and I said, no, that's not exactly it. And you were asking me, would there be a deduction in your points for discussion responses that were sort of, off in another direction? No, there will not. Look, the thing that I'm looking at primarily is, are you answering the questions and are you engaging with the class? I go through them and say, yeah, this is what we're looking for now. This is not what we're looking for, to help focus and orient you for the tests, not as an evaluation like, oh, you got it right and then you get the points, or oh, you got it wrong, you don't get the points. Okay, that the points are awarded because of the process of discussion. Now excuse me, typically what I do is halfway through the semester, then I will grade the discussion post again, and if you're participating, you'll get the points for the discussion post. Okay. And so, at the conclusion of week 4, next week into week 5, I will go back and grade 1 through 4. Okay. So I hope that if there's anybody else who had that question, and I hope that clears it up. Also, I got a question about discussion for week 4. The person asked, so I'm just reading the email answer. Okay, I see. Yeah, I have a typo in that discussion. My apologies. I say to answer 2, and then I have the number 3. My mea culpa. That should say 3, and I will make the changes and try to clear up that confusion. Okay, so for this week, we are again back into the readings in PAP, I guess, and MAP and PIP. All right. And so I want you to dig into chapters. Let's see here. Dig into chapters 19 through 24 in PIP, and chapters 6 through 7 in MAP. So a little more reading this time than normally. I don't have any additional readings assigned. But also this week, you have now your assigned second film review. For all of those of you who turn your reviews in on time, I've gotten through them and gotten them back to them to you in the Canvas module. So that's some feedback to you as to what I'm typically looking for. If you have any questions about how I evaluated your work or comments that I've made, because sometimes I have time, I make I'm able to make longer comments. Sometimes it's just sort of shorter. Typically, though, if you see a comment from me, and if I see the whether you're doing this well or you should be doing something different, if that repeats throughout the paper, I'm not going to go through the paper and find the whole thing. If you see, especially if you see, hey, correct this, do that throughout your work. All right. Everybody did really well by and large. Okay. Some areas just to focus on. Make sure that you're emphasizing the themes. What I mean by emphasize is make sure that you give them sufficient treatment. Also, make sure that you give sufficient historical treatment to the setting of the film. And in your discussion of what you thought of the film, be sure to include enough detail in there that indicates to the reader, that would be me, that you watched the film. Now, some of you might be saying, well, of course I watched the film. That's the point of the whole exercise. given. But, you know, as an evaluator, I don't know right off the top of my head whether somebody watched something or not. Okay. So tighten up those areas a little bit and you're going to do just fine. So the next film review is due June the 10th. Same thing, worth 100 points. Same list. There's not a new list. Okay. I think there's 11 films on there. And you'll watch 4 throughout the semester. So, you know, you get your pick. Okay. And, you know, let me encourage you, if you haven't seen one on there before, take a look and, you know, maybe watch something that you hadn't seen or explores a theme that you're not familiar with. All right. Use this as a learning experience. Okay. That's that for this week. Let us take a look at, oh, you know what? Actually, one more thing. Okay. So, you have your, you know, you have the 4 film reviews, and I know it's still 4 more weeks away. It's a month away, but if this were a paper, I would remind you to remember we have a final exam in the class, and the final exam will be drawn from the discussion questions. So if you have any questions about how I evaluate a particular question, whether it's your answer or somebody else's, be sure to reach out for me for clarification, because I will be referencing not only the discussion question in its full context in the book, but not a whole bunch, but I'll have a few questions that reference what it is I discuss here in these videos. All right, so I just want to make sure everybody's all good with that. Okay, let's take a look at this last week discussion number 3. You had 7 questions. You were asked to pick 3. And again, remember, even if classmates pick questions that you didn't, you're still asked to respond to those questions that they answered, which is a way for you to be aware of the entirety of the text. So maybe I just spilled my coffee. Maybe you know, you picked only the question about which bite. You know, that'd be question number 1. Does the use of social media by politicians and political parties represent a revitalization of democracy? You pick that. And then cracking the code of media influence, you pick that. All right, that'd be 1, 3, 7. But other people picked 6, you know, 4, 5, 6, or whatever. Still respond to them, because you'll have gone through the material, and this is the important part, you'll have prepped your understanding of each of the questions, all of which are fair game for the exam. Okay. Question number 1, according to Grab and Busey, which bite, the sound or the image bite, has an increasing impact on the audience, and why? Nathaniel, let's take you. You're right at the top. Grab and Busey argue that image bites have greater power than sound bites when it comes to elections. Okay. Correct. Richard, you also right. Grab and Busey argue that sound bites play an important, if not controversial, role in an election, but the biggest untold story of television coverage is presidential campaigns is the prevalence of candidate image bites. Yes. Think of the meme. And a way that you might think of the meme, and you ought maybe to remember this for future references like exams, wink. Think of the meme in anthropological terms. Memes now are to, you know, within the anthropological consideration, they are to people as totems, and we still have totems, are to people. That is, they are used, they become symbols that are used to exert in the mind of the viewer power over the thing that they address. And generally, you know, it's not that they're used to sort of almost shrink down, contain the person, the attitude, the political ideology, the process, in a way that becomes diminishing, that is, of their importance, their impact, their efficacy, their coolness. Okay. And then in the mind of the viewer, this gives them an assumption of power, or, oh, yeah, or almost the permission to be dismissive of the thing, the person, the process, the political, ideological position. Okay. So physical images have always played large, more so than sound. And in fact, within sound, that is verbal description, or even just sound. The goal is to draw a mental picture. Okay. Question number 2. In your opinion, are short, visually driven sound bites driving social media, think memes, or is it the other way around? Okay, sort of a chicken and an egg. Richard, you say Dunway and Grabber write that presidential elections, both parties' campaigns invested highly in digital strategies but employed different tactics. However, it didn't stop either candidate from using social media platforms to reach donors, et cetera, et cetera. However, it doesn't mean that politicians can't use social media for the agenda when it's not during the election cycle. That's true. But which is driving which? Warren, an ability to adapt to the times in which they live is part of what makes certain people successful. Okay, let me just like pull the time out here to Warren and everybody else. Get into the habit, unless you're writing feature pieces or op-ed or more journalistic stuff, get into the habit of addressing the question. Even you could even repeat the question. Address it within the first line or two of the paragraph. So instead of the ability to adapt to the times, et cetera, they change with the changing times. Okay, still we're waiting. And I'm not picking on you, Warren. I'm just using this as an example. Change with the changing times. In a world where information is freely transmitted and received in short segments, we're 2.5 sentences in, and I still don't know what your opinion is as to which is driving which. Okay. These short, visually driven sound bites are easily consumed via social media. Knowing this is how people are gathering information has led to companies to adapt their message to these sound bites. Social media professionals need to create and share short videos to promote their event. This message may be short and direct. This is what people want and pay attention to online. Long programs with depth coverage and videos are not as popular. Okay, thus, visually driven sound bites have more impact. Okay, well, that's true, but which is driving which? Okay, because here's what we're getting at with this question. All right. I mean, this is gone now, but and been replaced by YouTube Shorts and TikTok. But back in the day, there was a platform, Vine, that put up short videos, and in fact, they were required to be short because there just wasn't that much space. It was part of a marketing strategy. It's like, if I got to rent all the space on a server, will require. It's like the early days of Twitter. You had to be within the parameters of a certain number of characters, and that included spaces. And so, in terms of the video, Vine said it can't be longer, and I think it was, don't quote me on this, but it was like 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Okay. It just, this thing took off, and they sold it, and it got absorbed, and it sort of branched off. It became YouTube Shorts, it became TikTok. The question is, was it that they just sort of stumbled upon this by mistake? Like, oh, hey, that people will tune in to something very short, or was it that people's attention spans are now keyed to things that are short? Let me mention a work to you that you ought to look at. It's by an author named Nicholas Carr, Carr. Okay, and it's called The Shallows, and it looks at what the internet is, what the use of the internet as a means of information and communication and an interface is doing to the development of our brain. And I don't mean in an evolutionary sense, but how our brain thinks, because the brain is there's a lot of plasticity. In fact, that's the term, neuroplasticity. You can rewire the brain to think differently, to react differently. This is the guiding theory behind talk therapy to help people with trauma. Okay, you rewire how the brain tends to go over and over and over the experience again. Okay. Now there's an open-ended question here as to which is which. So I'm not giving you there's a right answer and a wrong answer, but that's what we're driving at. Okay. Question number 3. T.E. Patterson quotes from Walter Lippmann, who said that press-based presses in the press-based politics is not workable. And when you consider the nature of the news, it's not even thinkable. In other words, you can't do it, don't do it. what did Lippmann mean by this, given that Lippmann died before the rise of social media? Do you agree with his quoted statement? Okay. Um, let's see. Let's take somebody that we haven't taken yet. Okay. Billy. T. Patterson, et cetera, et cetera. Quote from Walter Lippmann still applies even though he stated over a century ago, democracy falters if there's no steady supply of trustworthy and relevant news. And this is from the Harvard Kennedy School, 2013. Okay, and then you get into your answer. But that's exactly right. Okay. It is difficult. And now understand, try to understand. Let's start with the meaning of the word democracy. It's actually made up of two Greek words, demos, meaning the crowd or the people, and kratos, excuse me, because it's Greek, it's spelled with a K, which means power. So it means people power. And the exercise of power by the people becomes a destabilizing force when the people are not well informed as to how to exercise their power. So this is what Lippmann is getting at, and it is irrelevant to whatever platform you're looking at. That's something I don't want as scholars as you develop. Don't get hung up on saying, well, it's the internet, it's different. No, because what we're talking about here in this triangular relationship that we've been looking at in the semester, the relationship between media, people, and governance. Okay, we're not looking at the important part of that equation is not the mechanism, it's the reactionism of the individual. It's not the thing that's sending out the message. Okay, it is the receiver and how the receiver reacts when the message gets there. Now you could say, okay, well, that's kind of chicken and egg, isn't it, Dr. Gardner? That what sends the message also has, shapes how it is that the message is received. Yes, true. Okay, but by way of action, and this is what we call hermeneutics, and this is the hermeneutic cycle. By way of action, that action is dependent upon the reaction of the receiver. So hermeneutics goes like this: you send out a message, and if you've been in a relationship, you know this already by heart. You send out a message, that is, you say something or you do something, whether it's a gesture, because messages can be nonverbal as well. Okay, so you send out a message with, you may not be super clear, but with the intent, with the understanding of this is what it means. Someone hears the message and they go, what did you mean? Or they take a meaning from it that you did not intend. And then they send that message back. So now they're the sender and you're the receiver with the implied meaning that they assumed you meant to the message. And then you get it and you go, no, that's not what I meant. Right? Within the field of communication that deals with couples and their communication, this is an area that therapists are told to watch out for. And if you're a couples and you're in a relationship, you want to have a stable relationship, and you should, over the arc of time, you should strive for stable marriages. These are good for you and good for all the rest of us. Beware of this phenomenon, because quite frequently what you see is sender receiver, and they constantly switch roles back and forth. They switch from an argument about the issue to an argument about what it meant when somebody expressed their position on the issue. And now you have two arguments, and it's generally this one that gets attended to. What did you mean when you said blah, blah, blah? Well, that's not what I meant, what I said. Well, that sounded like what you meant when you said, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Okay, that's called the hermeneutic cycle. And, this is part and parcel of what goes on in communication. Okay. Question number, where are we? Question number 4. In your opinion, does the use of social media by politicians and political parties represent a revitalization of our democracy, or merely the manipulation of the public on an expanding scale? And what I mean by revitalization, of course, is since the internet affords the opportunity for more and more people to participate, this is an expansion of the people involved, and this grows the demos side of the term democracy. All right. So it's expanding the opportunity for people to get involved. In fact, that's really the distinguishing factor. We say old media, new media, or some people use like legacy media, or I don't like the term mainstream media, but they use those terms. The dividing line, the big difference is established media, old media, mainstream media, however you like it, is at its structural core a monologue. The paper is telling you this is what it is. The news broadcaster is telling you what it is. You're not having a discussion with the paper editor. You're not having a discussion with the broadcaster. In new media or online media or digital media or whatever term you like, and many of you may do this already by default. I mean, I've seen studies that look at how much time people spend reading the comments and engaging in comments versus reading the actual piece online. And there's some data that indicates they spend more time on the dialogue that's allowed through new media than they do on the piece. And that's the big dividing line between new media and old media. Old media, monologue. It just tells you you don't talk back. New media, dialogue, tells you talk back. And then sometimes the person that presented the media talks back to you, or you're talking amongst yourselves as consumers of the media. Okay. So is the use of social media, is that expanding it, or is it just a means by which politicians can manipulate the public? Let's see, Nathaniel, let's take you. Perhaps most troubling is almost universally accepted belief that private conduct affects the course of public action. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a wrong question. Let's see, who answered this? Warren, you answered this. Much of politics is manipulation. Okay, so we'll get down photo images. Let's jump down to the bottom. It's a tool that works for both Republicans and Democrats. They often complain about their opponents' tactics while they conduct their business in a similar manner. Not only can words manipulate, but images can as well. Photo images can be edited much easier today than in the past. From Photoshop to AI, editing has become more sophisticated, widespread. Photos can be enhanced or changed to elicit emotions response to the viewer. Okay, fine. But again, answer the question, folks. Is this a revitalization of our democracy, or is this a manipulation? Okay, are you saying when you talk about AI and photos, that the allowance for manipulation, that is manipulation? And if that's what you're saying, Warren, I'm missing it. Okay, Valerie, let's see what you have to say. Okay, this undermines. Okay, here we go. Additionally, micro-targeting voters through data analytics allow campaigns to create customized, often misleading messages that bypass public scrutiny and media verification. Thus, this undermines deliberative democracy by obstructing informed discussion and sustaining ideological echo chambers. Social media platforms are frequently used to sway opinions, generate consent, and divide public discourse, thereby weakening democratic institutions instead of fostering transparency and civic engagement. Okay, that is certainly going on. Okay. Question number 5. In an interview concerning the successful 2008 campaign of then candidate Obama, Anita Dunn noted that it was the campaign's daily job to get around the filters. Who is Anita Dunn, and what did she mean by the statement to get around the filters? Is it good for our democracy? Did anybody answer question number 5? I don't know that you did. Okay, yes, Heather, you did. Getting around the filters. Anita Dunn was a political communication specialist who served the Obama advisor campaign. Yeah, and the reason that I ask you to ask that is whenever you read a statement about or by someone, who is this person? Do they have any knowledge, any established expertise in the field, or are they just some talking head? All right, look it up. Check the sources. Okay. Their campaigns. There was a campaign that they press was talking about successfully. Okay, so who are the filters then? Dunn realized a significant disconnect existed between what media focused on, internet discussion, what actually won the election. Dunn describes how they would give the press and bloggers enough to talk about while they went around the filters and focused on their message, like improving healthcare in important states. She bluntly states that there was a campaign that they, the press, were talking about, and then that was not actually the real campaign. McCain seemed to be struggling with this process because he used the old media that did not adapt nearly as well. While getting around filter seemingly helped Obama with his campaign, it seemed depressing that the media frequently focused on busy work while the important message did not get posted as much as in the McCain versus Obama campaign. Okay. Who are the filters, though? All right, everybody, if you don't know that, when she says the filters, make sure that you look that up and you know that. I'm not going to tell you for this one. Okay. Number 6, the so-called attack journalism, good for democracy. Okay. And this is, this goes by a couple of names. This is like gotcha journalism. It used to be called muckraking. Okay. I don't know that anybody answered question number 6. Nathan, did you answer it? Okay. People may express their opinions, but once we start attacking individual and not an issue, we lose sight of what we are fighting for. The problem becomes a person. The real issue never gets addressed as a result. Okay. So Nathaniel is saying this is bad. Okay. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. And in fact, within the realm of rhetoric, that is the study of how you construct an argument, this is demarcated as a no-no. Attacking the individual's characteristics rather than the issues, and it has a specific term. It's called an ad hominem, which means to the person, to the man, and not in the sense of male. Homo as in Homo sapien. Ad hominem attack. So you're not dealing with the issue, you're dealing with the individual. But what about, this is part of what I was trying to get at with this question. What about, politicians' private lives? All right. And journalists that sneak around and find out things that were done or said, and then they go, aha! Is that good? Well, on the one hand, as you point out, Nathaniel, it's often used as a distraction from the issues. Fair enough. But on the other hand, when you consider that the nature of government and governance and those who govern us is that we, the people, are hiring people, that's the election part, who we pay, those are our taxes part, to work for us. And the question becomes, and that work goes on almost entirely unsupervised. I mean, how many of you have hung out in the office of your local legislator, mayor, dog catcher, let alone governor, senator, or president, to see how it is they come to decisions concerning you and your money? So what they do largely goes on unsupervised. And the question arises, if someone, when they believe no one is watching them, has a propensity to do the wrong thing, either morally or legally, can they be trusted to do the right thing when they're hired to do a job in which nobody is watching? And as such, isn't it not in the public interest to find out, to dig around, to aha about what a politician does or doesn't do when they don't think anybody is going to be watching them? Okay, fair question. Number 7, cracking the code of media influence on public attitude and behavior, especially concerning political positions and voter patterns, is the golden fleece for candidates. Okay, Hillary Clinton spent more money, and this is and by the way, Vice President Kamala Harris spent a lot more money than Donald Trump and lost anyway. So based on what you read at MAP, what were some of the reasons Donald Trump's 2016 presidential victory, in your opinion? Could these reasons translate into a victory for Trump in 2024? And, in fact, they did. Okay. Now, I know, obviously, I'm posing a question that's already answered, but what I wanted was for you to say, okay, this is why this happened in 2016, and this is why this could happen. And by the way, like him or hate him, you've lived through, I mean, this goes without saying with most, but you've lived through an historical phenomenon Donald J. Trump will if God blesses you with them, your grandchildren will be telling you about what they learned in school concerning the political arc of this individual. This is unique among political stories. This has never happened before, that someone went through these sort of circumstances. Again, this is I don't like sycophants and sycophantian behavior around anybody where everybody's, oh, he's so great, or oh, she's so great. It's like, look, especially when you're dealing with public officials. Okay. I mean, I reserve the hero worship for genuine heroes and then Jesus Christ. Okay. But there is something phenomenon. There's something phenomenal. There's a phenomenal phenomenon, repeat, in the political life of Donald J. Trump. Okay, so I think Billy is the only one who answered this question. Let's take a look at you. How did he do it, Billy? Several factors contributed to the discrepancy between Clinton's investment and her social media campaign and Trump's. On the one side, contributing factors is fake news, social media use, trust in that, and more reports of news that are affected by personal journalist bias, spreading information in bits, pieces producing illegitimate news grew. So did the disinterest in social media users relying on platforms to deliver credible news. 86% get their reporting and news on digital media devices, preferring apps. Okay, yes, there was a shift in where people got their information. And the Clinton campaign, and you're right, Billy, so this is a good answer. And then you said, yes, I followed too. Could he do it again? You say, yes, he could do it again. There was a shift. And the Clinton campaign did not follow that. Now, interestingly, Donald Trump managed to leverage another shift for 2024. All right. And it was really a trifecta. There were three major shifts that he managed to leverage to secure election victory. Number one was the rise of the non-expert expert. I do not think that I was never behind the scenes, but based on their outward behavior, I do not think the Kamala Harris campaign understood the power of certain social media personalities. And I'll use Joe Rogan as an example. All right. Joe Rogan, Joe Rogan is I don't have the time to watch the whole show. I mean, I've watched a few of them, okay, but I'm very familiar with this platform, this product. But Joe Rogan is not an investigative journalist. He's not, he's a guy he was a television host for Fear Factor, and he was a mixed martial arts fighter, and then a coach and a referee and a commentator. But he's got an enormous audience. And what we're seeing out is what's a phenomenon referred to as the rise of the non-expert expert. People going to non-traditional sources and individuals for advice that becomes the centrality of what they do. Okay. Now, Vice President Harris's campaign tried to utilize some media platforms, but they were of such limited reach in terms of numbers and demographics that it didn't work. The Call Her Daddy podcast, for example, that didn't work. That was their first error. They did not understand the shift in who people saw as experts. And the Trump campaign did. That was number one. Okay. Number two, they did not seem to tap into how powerful the visual bites of Joe Biden, and many of them were edited. Were they deep faked? Probably not. They didn't have to be. All right. But I mean by edited, they were truncated. That portrayed him as inept and out of it. And they were very dissatisfied with that administration. And when you have a vice president that's tacked on, she's joined at the hip to that administration, you can't get away from it. And they thought, well, we're going to switch this guy out for her. No, this isn't the administration. This is Kamala Harris. This is a whole new thing. And because of, I would argue, a lot of the visual bites, people were like, no, this is not a whole new thing. And the Trump campaign pivoted and seized on that and said, well, she keeps saying that, things are going to get better and we're going to fix it. And where have they been for the last 4 years? Ignoring the fact that the vice president doesn't make policy. The vice president breaks the tie in the Senate and then goes out, cuts ribbons and shakes hands and hangs around. There are those who've refused the job of vice president because they say it's boring. Okay, so that was the second factor that involved media that the Harris campaign did not understand, and the Trump campaign did, and they leveraged. And then finally, 3 was there is a shift, and it's sort of like a full circle. There's a shift in what celebrity icons really have traction. And and yes, there were issues that the Trump campaign picked up on, dissatisfaction with the economy and the people being in the country who aren't legal. And you could even argue there was some fear mongering, watch out, murderers, rapists. Okay, but we're talking about media here. Okay, the Kamala Harris campaign, it was clear to me, did not understand that individuals like Oprah Winfrey just don't have the pull that they used to have. Or Whoopi Goldberg, appearing on The View. That they don't have the reach and the impact. And that takes you all the way around full circle to not understanding who the new experts were. And the Trump campaign did understand these things. In addition to hammering away at these various issues, they did leverage those tools in a way that not only gave them a victory, you look at the numbers, and this is not, bragging on an administration or a particular politician. They didn't just win, they thumped them. It was a resounding defeat. They won all of the swing states. Clearly, this campaign missed something. Okay, that's it. We're about half an hour and change. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a good week. I will post questions. Well, no, I actually posted questions already. If you turned in a movie review number 1 late, you got to give me a couple more days to get to it. So I'll get those to you. And so good luck with your second one. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I think about you. I pray about you. Have a great week. And I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.